another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen, and today I am so excited because if you are new to canning and pickling and preserving, this is the perfect video for you, because in this video I'm going to show you how to make the simple cucumber relish. This is the sweet cucumber relish, and it's perfect if you're new to pickling and preserving and those kind of things, because there's no long waiting process for your pickles. If you've ever seen the 14-day pickle recipe, yes, it does take a total of 14 to 15 really days. This, we can have it done, knocked out of the ballpark in 2 hours, which from 14 days to 2 hours, that's a bonus for me. So that's what I'm going to be working on today, sweet cucumber relish. Stay tuned. Before we get going in the video, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing, because this is the produce season, this is the preserving season, this is the canning season. And we will be doing more canning videos as our gardens and farmers markets and farm stands are brimming with fresh summer veggies. So subscribe, hit the subscribe button, comment, like, and let's jump into the video. Now, before we jump into what you need to make this sweet cucumber relish, I want to say right off the bat that I will be using the Ball Blue book, and this is the book that my mother canned out of. This is the book that I can out of. Now, there are many recipes online for, different types of relish, different types of cucumber pickles, different types of condiments. But this is one that is standard, and it's one that you can easily find. So I'm going to be using that, a recipe you find online that's perfect, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with those. I have used some of them. But since we're talking about a broad general audience of an easy to find recipe, I will be working out of the Ball Blue canning book. And this recipe is called Sweet Pickle Relish. And let's go over an overview of what they call for. So for this recipe, you need 1 quart of chopped cucumbers. That's about 4 medium cucumbers, which would kind of pan out to be of this size. You also need 2 cups of chopped onions. You need 1 cup of chopped green bell pepper, 1 cup of chopped red bell pepper, 1/4 cup of ball salt, 3.5 cups of sugar, just regular granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of celery seeds, 1 tablespoon of mustard seeds, 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, and they also have an option for Ball Pickle Crisp. Now, here is how I'm going to make it. I don't have any celery seed, couldn't find any, so I'm going to use dill seed, and these are the variations that you can kind of tweak a recipe to make it your own. And I'll explain the things that you can add and the things that you can take away and the things that you do not want to meddle with. Now, one of the things you don't want to meddle with is the vinegar. Never reduce vinegar in a recipe, because that's what makes your low acid food shelf stable. So there's no option for reducing the vinegar. You can increase it, but you don't want to reduce it. The sugar, you can cut the sugar in half. Your pickle relish just will be half. It won't be as sweet. If you want it to be a little bit more sweet, you can increase the sugar, or you can decrease it, or you can leave it as it is. The salt, because a lot of people like low sodium canning recipes, the salt is what draws all of that excess liquid out of your cucumbers. I have made it using half the amount of salt, or at least 3/4 the amount of salt, and it has worked out fine. So if you want to cut the salt in half, you can cut the salt in half. But since the salt is not there for so much the flavor, although it does flavor your cucumbers, it is what draws the moisture out of your cucumbers, so you don't end up with a soupy relish. But don't worry about the salt levels if 1/4 cup of salt disturbs you, because as the recipe says, you're going to rinse it, you're going to drain that salted water out, then you're going to rinse it, then you're going to drain it, then you're going to rinse it again. By the time you do all of that, most of that salt is going on down the drain. So you don't have to worry about the salt. And like I say, in 2 to 3 hours, we're done. We have pickles ready to go. I think that's a win-win for me. So that is the recipe. Now let's talk about the ingredients, what I have here. I have here some cucumbers. And if you notice, these are not the world's, the little cute, tiny cucumbers. Some of these are larger. Some of these are medium, and some of these are small. And this is the perfect type of cucumbers to use for making your relish, because you're just going to chop everything up in the food processor anyway. So you need onions. The more onions, the better. And I'll let you decide how many onions. Now, the Ball Canning book says 2 cups of chopped onions. If you want 4 cups of chopped onions, go for it. The more onions, the merrier. And then, of course, I have the bell pepper. Now, I don't have red bell pepper. I have yellow and green. If you want little specks of red, you can use red bell pepper. And as I say, I'll be using dill seed instead of celery seed. I'm a bigger fan of dill than I am of celery, so that's what I'll be using. And I'll add in some yellow mustard seed, and I might add in a little touch of turmeric. Again, these are flavorings that we have the option to either add or don't add. If you don't like dill seed, if you don't like mustard seed, if you don't like turmeric, you can leave it out. It won't affect your canning whatsoever. This is just the taste part. And also I have pickling and canning salt. You must use pickling and canning salt when you are pickling or canning, because this is pure salt. You can also use kosher salt. Don't use Himalayan pink salt. Don't use table salt. All of those salts have either natural additives, as in the case with the pink Himalayan, or it has added additives, as in the case with table salt. All of that will affect your canning, and you don't want to tinker with those salts. Save those for other things. And of course, you need vinegar. Now, I don't have enough apple cider vinegar. I'm just going to use white distilled vinegar. Vinegar is still vinegar. The vinegar flavor will be a little bit quieter than with the distilled vinegar than if you use the apple cider vinegar. But if you have apple cider vinegar and that's what you want to use, absolutely go for it. Either vinegar will work. It will not affect your canning process. Just, it won't have that super strong vinegary taste, which I'm perfectly comfortable with. So those are the ingredients. Let's jump into the equipment. Now, of course, if you're canning, you need jars. And since this is a condiment, I'm going to use these 8-ounce, what we would typically call jam jars. Now, you can use larger jars, but as I said in a previous canning video, I think it was, I was canning strawberry jam. By the way, I will leave links to my various canning videos and also my canning and preserving series. I will leave it in the iCards, so you can check out those videos, because I do strawberry jam, we do pickled eggs, we do pickled beets, we do other types of canning things. The strawberry jam video is an excellent video that gives you an overview of any kind of canning. Same with the pickled eggs. Those give you an excellent video of any kind of canning, because at the end of the day, all canning, whether it's sweet or savory, you pretty much need similar equipment. So as I said about the jars, using smaller jars, because this is a condiment, means you only open up what you need, the amount of what you need. If you have a large family, or if you need, say for instance, you're used to making, things of potato salad or egg salad or whatever, you can use the half-pint jars, the pint jars, sorry. You can use those. But since this is a condiment, I'm using a smaller jar. That way I open up a smaller amount. And that goes for any kind of canning. You don't want to get too, you don't want to get too silly with teeny tiny canning jars. But use the size jar that you will use, so you don't open up too large an amount and then you may not use it all. And then of course you need your canning funnel, you need your jar opener. You will need a colander for draining the cucumbers. So you need a large colander. And then, since this is not going to be a great amount, I'm going to use a stock pot. You can use your large canning pot. That works very nicely. So you also need some measuring cups and measuring spoons. And I will be using these beautiful, beautiful measuring cups and measuring spoons that my lovely aunties gave me. Thank you, Aunt Barbara and Aunt Jackie. These are so cute, and I absolutely cannot wait to use them. They are so precious. Also, of course, I'll be using a heart-shaped spoon, because when you're cooking, you gotta cook with the heart, you gotta cook from the heart. So I will be using my heart-shaped spatula for this one. These are so cute. I absolutely can't wait to use them. So that's an overview of the equipment. Now, let's jump into canning. Now, one of the first things we want to do is to go ahead and wash our cucumbers and get them nicely scrubbed and ready. And I'm going to be using for this a good veggie brush. You do want to make sure you wash the cucumbers very well. These are organic cucumbers straight out of the garden. And you want to make sure you remove any dirt, anything, because that can cause your pickles to spoil if you don't scrub them well. So I'm going to step over to the sink, give these an extra good scrub in cold water, and then I'll have them ready for the food processor. So we've got all the cucumbers washed and ready to go. Now, it's time to get them chopped up and ready for the food processor. And I'm just going to rough chop them and throw them right into the food processor. Now, this cucumber's seeds are a little bit big and a little bit tough side. Now, you can just grab a bowl and scrape those seeds out. And there we are. And then just whack this one up and put it right in with the others. So now, put the lid on the food processor and blitz these up. So let's turn it on. And you just want to use a low pulse until you kind of get your feet about you and you kind of know what you're doing. You don't want to just turn it on and let it go, or you will get soup. So I'm just going to give it just a simple pulse for the first portion. How we like that texture. Grab the spoon. And good. Could use maybe another pulse or two. Just scrape that down. And I think I might give it just maybe 1 to 2 more pulses. You do want to be very careful so you don't over pulverize it. There's no going back once you do, so go slow. And 2. That's perfect. Now, this is a Ninja food processor, and I really like my Ninja appliances because it's pretty much no nonsense, and they very seldom go dull. So I've had this one for a number of years, and it works perfectly fine. If you don't have a food processor, you can use a knife and a cutting board. I've done that before, and it works perfectly fine. So if you don't have it, don't feel bad about it. Just grab the knife and the cutting board. It might take you a little bit longer. Your pieces will be more uniform, but you'll get there either way. So it's fine. So I'm just going to take these out and keep going with the rest of my cucumbers, and then we'll move on to the onions and the peppers. Got all the cucumbers chopped up. Another thing I do want to say, you can chop them up as fine or as coarse as you want to. That's entirely up to you. You know, it depends on how fine. I'm going with the medium fine, but they're still in very nice dices. But how small is optional. It works either way. Now it's time for the onions. Now that we've got everything mixed in here, so 1/4 cup of salt. So that's this one that we need. Okay, and I need 1/4 cup, so that'll be that one. They are so cute. Like, they're so pretty. And actually, for pickling, this is not a lot of salt. I do want to say something too about doubling recipes you can safely double some recipes. And this is one of them. You can double it. So I'm just going to sprinkle on the salt, half of it, and then stop and give it a little stir. Just to make sure everybody gets nicely salted. There we are. And you can pretty much see the cucumbers start to exude liquid right away. Okay. And then the remainder of the salt. There we are. Okay, so let's spread that out and let that sit. And you can see here, let's set this aside, we don't have any water. Well, we do have a little bit of water collecting now, just a little bit around the edges. But once this sits, and the canning book says let stand for 2 hours. Once this sits, this is going to be full of water, and that's all the water in the onions and the cucumbers. So I'm going to set a timer, counting down. I'm going to cover this up with a plate, set it aside in a cool spot. While my cucumbers are soaking in the salt, I am going to wash my canning jars, and I'm going to get them in my canning pot, and I'm going to go ahead and start sterilizing my jars. Now, I have a video with strawberry jam where I show you how to take you through those canning processes. So you can refer back to that video if you need some tips. So that's what I'm going to be doing while my cucumbers are relaxing in their salt bath. Okay, so the time is up on the pickle relish. Now, there is a lot of liquid that came out, which is precisely what we wanted. The salt has done its job, and I'm going to overlay a picture so you can see exactly how much liquid comes out of it. And the salt has done its job. So now it's time to drain this salted water out of the relish, and then I'm going to wash it, I'm going to drain it, and get it ready to go into our pot. Now we can move on to getting the pickling liquid together. We're in like stretch number 3 of 4 steps, so we're in step number 3. Now the recipe says you need 3.5 cups of sugar. Now for me, that's quite a bit of sugar, so I'm actually just going to use a little bit less. As I talked about earlier, you can keep it at the quantity that they suggest, or you can reduce it. 3.5 cups of sugar for me is a bit sweet. The good news is when you're canning this type of thing, you can taste it and see if that's too much sugar, or, you know, like before you get to the, like say you want to use half of the amount of sugar, which is 1 3/4 cup, you can. So it gives you a good option of, do I want more or do I want less? And so that's 1 cup. Using my beautiful measuring cups that my aunties gave me. And then I need 1/2 cup. And 1/2 cup of sugar goes in. Like I said, that is a considerable amount of sugar, so actually I don't even need that. So, you know, how much you use, how much you choose to use is entirely up to you. And we also need a tablespoon of mustard seeds. So I'm just going to grab a tablespoon of mustard seeds. Here we are. And a tablespoon of celery seeds. Now, I am not going to use celery seeds. I'm actually going to use dill seeds. You can use celery if you want to. And I'm just going to measure out about 1/2 teaspoon of dill seeds, because dill can be fairly strong. So just 1/2 teaspoon of dill seeds. This is the fun bit about canning, because you can customize this. If you don't want any of these spices in your pickle relish, you don't have to add any in there. I'm also going to add just a tiny amount, and this is not in the recipe, but I like it for a little bit of color. I'm going to add about 1/8 teaspoon of turmeric, just because it gives it a nice little color. And now we need 2 cups of cider vinegar. This recipe calls for no water, and you don't want to use any water in this either. Despite what you may think about it being a little too tart, you don't want to use any water, because, oops, just for canning safety purposes, no water. Okay, so that's 1 cup. And here she goes. 1 cup of vinegar. You draining vegetables are being very noisy. And 2 cups. Of course, I'm wasting vinegar all over the cabinets, all over the countertop. Okay, that's 1 and that's 2. There we are. Now I'm going to take this over to the stove and I'm going to bring this up to a simmer and just make sure that we dissolve all of the sugar. Come to a boil, add the drained veggies, and let it simmer for 10 minutes. So the spices and whatnot has come to the boil and the sugar is dissolved. So now we're good to go ahead and add in those drained veggies. And this is where the slotted spoon comes in. You just scoop it and put it right in. I think I'm good to go ahead and just add the rest of it. Now that may not seem like a lot of pickling liquid, but once you add all of the veggies in, it does become more in volume. Plus a little extra liquid comes out of the cucumbers as well. Okay, so we're with that, and set that aside. And just give this a stir. Bring it to the boil. And let this simmer for 10 minutes. And now it's time to ladle it into the jar. All right, so the first thing to do is to take a jar out. And if you notice, I washed more jars than I think I need, just because. Grab a few paper towels to set these on, because these are incredibly hot, and also sometimes you can waste some and it'll stain your board. Always wash more jars than you think you will need for your recipe, simply because if you don't use them, that's fine. But if you need them, when you have to go and sterilize one jar, which could be a painful thing to have to do. So I just wash extra jars. All right, ladle it in. And kind of give it a little shake. And we're gonna leave a 1/2 inch headspace. So that is precisely 1/2 inch headspace. And then just add on the lid. Ooh, it is hot. The paper towel helps as well. And repeat with the remainder. Now just go ahead and lower this back into the pot. That just keeps it nice and hot. Let's do another one. Set that there. Put the lid on. Thank you, Jesus. And it goes. And it looks like today I might end up using all of the jars. Okay, now I was a bit greedy with this one, so let's just take some of that out. If you happen to have to take some out, just remove it like that. Also, if your canning liquid is a little bit thinner than what you like, you know, say your vinegar sugar brine is not quite as thick as you want, you can drain out your cucumbers, set that aside, and then reduce your liquid down, and it'll get a lot thicker that way. If you want it to be more of a syrupy consistency. I don't, so I don't do that. But if you want it to be that way, especially if you're using this as a hot dog relish, you do want it to be a little bit more syrupy. The reason why mine isn't so syrupy is because I didn't use the full quantity of sugar, because I don't like it quite that sweet. All right, so just keep on ladling it into your jars. The last jar goes in. And there we are. So now we've got all our pickle relish packed in our jars. I'm going to put this on the stove and I'm going to bring it to a boil. When it comes to a boil, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes and I'm going to process these pint jars for 10 minutes at a full rolling boil, and then we'll come back. After 10 minutes, turn the stove off and carefully remove the jars from the pot. All right, so all the jars are out of the canner, and they've processed. They are still very hot, but they've processed for 10 minutes, and it looks good. Now, out of all those cucumbers that I had, we have 9 jars. Actually, we have about 11 jars, because this is the equivalent of about 2 of these jars, because this is a 15 ounce and a little more than a half jar. So you end up with about heading towards 10 to 11 jars. And these will last for a good while in the pantry. They'll last for up to a year. I know, because I've done it before, and they do last a good while. And you can, as I say, you can use it in potato salad, you can use it in egg salad, you can use it in chicken salad. You can also just put them on hot dogs. It's also a good snack with cream cheese and crackers too. So all of my jars are popped. I'm actually waiting on one to pop. It may or may not pop. But while that jar gets itself together about whether or not it wants to pop, I want to show you what a jar that is not sealed, and that's what we're waiting on, just to let this jar seal. This is what a jar that has not sealed sound like. If you can do that, your jar hasn't sealed. And as you can see, this extra jar didn't seal, which is fine. I didn't want it to seal. But you want to check that out before you store your jars away in the pantry. There it goes. Ha-ha! Thank the Lord. There it goes. Okay, that was the last jar to seal. Excellent. Okay. Now, if you did not hear any of that, that meant none of your jars sealed sometimes. Now, depending on what kind of lids you use, some lids will seal themselves and they don't make a sound. And you just have to look for those visual clues. For instance, the top of your jar will be smooth and flat with no indentation in it. There's nothing to push. So that's a good sign if you don't hear popping. Also, sometimes they don't pop right away. It can take about an hour to 2 hours sometime for all of them. Normally they do, but sometimes they don't. So if they don't pop right away, don't get impatient. They will seal. If you have a jar that doesn't seal, just store it in the refrigerator and use it sooner than later. Now this is what the pickle relish looks like when it comes out of the jar. And it smells good. It smells really, really good. And you can see just how simple and easy this is to make it yourself. Yes, you can buy this at the grocery store, but if cucumbers are in season, you can now make your own pickle relish. And you can customize it. More sugar, less sugar, however you want. You can make as much or you can make as little as you want. And this is a good way to use up a bumper crop of cucumbers. Also, you can do the same thing with zucchini. Say you have more zucchini than you do cucumbers. Zucchini works perfectly well. I have made plenty of zucchini relish, and in all honesty, you really can't tell the difference between the cucumber and the zucchini. The only difference is the zucchini will exude a little bit more water than the cucumber, but you can easily interchange the cucumber for zucchini. Now, the Ball Canning book does contain a recipe for the zucchini if you're interested in that. So you can follow a recipe, or you can just sub it out however you like. So I hope you have enjoyed this canning video during the season of canning and preserving. If you have, please like and subscribe, and look forward to more videos as the summer rolls on and we have more and more produce. We will have more and more canning and preserving videos. The good Lord willing, I'll see you all again in another video. Take care, y'all. Bye.